Hello and welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza and I'm the digital pastor here at IES. And Take a Beat is a podcast of IES where we invite you to pause and process through stuff and talk about life and faith and to fuel us going back on the beat. So friends, when I was in teens, I was in IES, and I was one of the teens. And my youth pastor was having a birthday, and then one of the Pastor Mario, actually made this comment that stayed with me for a long time. He said, "Dude, like." Embrace your time, because once you hit 35, like it's downhill from there. And recently, I just turned 36, so I feel like it's like this is it. But I always like when I think about, I love birthdays. If you don't know this, if you've ever interacted with me, I will try being the keyword, because without Facebook and apps that could remind me of people's birthdays, it could be more difficult. But I love celebrating people's birthdays, and I love celebrating mine, not because of anything, but because I get to share it with people. But one of the things that I realize, or I actually like to do, is think about the goodness of God in my life. And actually, this happened yesterday, but one of my friends went with me for coffee, and she ordered this drink called the Miracle Cure. And I laughed because she told me that miracles apparently taste really bad. And I was having my usual iced cappuccino, and I like to play it safe. But talking about miracles, I am reminded of miracles, and how when people ask me this question, when people ask, "Oh, do you believe in miracles? Like, do miracles still happen?" My answer to that is always a yes. I cannot say no to that, because that is the story of my birth. I wouldn't be here if God didn't intervene through the natural to do something supernatural. So here's the story. Once upon a time, about 36 years ago. So when my mom was pregnant with me, so my parents were pastors, and they were traveling evangelists for about 8 years. And then after that, they settled in Jakarta and they planted a church. And then they got pregnant. And when they went to the doctor said that in the womb there was the me, and there was a tumor. And the tumor was bigger than me. And so the doctor was saying, okay, these are the risks, because my mom was a very straightforward, practical person, and she also studied medicine, and so she was a doctor, and so she wants the facts. And so the facts were that when the baby, me, grows, the tumor will also grow because it absorbs the same nutrients. And the risks were that the tumor was going to squish me. And my mom, who had gone through residency and things like that, has actually experienced assisting in a surgery where that was the case, with a mother who's pregnant, and there was a tumor in the womb, and the baby was squished to death. And so, of course, my mother told my dad and freaked him out. And so that was the condition. And so daily, for the the entire term of her pregnancy, they prayed. I think they prayed without ceasing. And they asked God for a miracle. They asked God, but every single time, well, the miracle was I was still alive, but the tumor was still there. And so, but the fear, and with the fear comes the prayer. And so at the end, when it was time for me to be born, they did a C-section, and the miracle was the tumor wasn't there. So when they did the C-section, there was only a scar left. There was no tumor, and here I am, 36 years later, still alive. Thank the Lord. So I don't really share that a lot, but I share this with you because that's how God has been faithful in my life, and that is also why when people ask me this, because I lead a couple of life groups, and some of my life group members would ask me, "Okay, PT, do you believe in miracles? Have you ever encountered a miracle?" And I said, "Well, yes, I don't remember it, but my parents told me there were ultrasound photos, and also actually my mom's doctor is related to a long-term IES person." And so, and actually I grew up being friends with the nephew of the doctor. Yes. So Stitch in Canada, shout out to you. We've been friends for about 30 years. And so that's kind of the story of my birth. And I always think about miracles. And so that's one of the things that I always look back on in my life and see how the hand of God has been with me, even before I was aware of anything. So talking about miracles, I think there's a lot of the times we as humans, we focus on the miracle too much, if that makes sense. In the Bible, in the Gospels, Jesus even told people, because people asked Jesus for signs, and Jesus was already doing miracles, but people were asking him for signs, and he says, "Dude, no more. You're always looking for miracles. You're always looking for a sign, but you don't believe." And so one of the things that I realize, and I think in my life too, is miracles are there to help us trust God more. And I think, like, I look back on my life, the thread of what God has taught me is to trust him. And I am naturally not a very trusting person. I have got trust issues the size of, I don't know, Jakarta. And so I think it required, even in the beginning of my life, for God to say, "This, I do exist, and this is what who I am, that I care for you." And so I grew up knowing that miracle happened, and hearing the story, and understanding that that's the story of why I'm around. Because I feel like in my darkest moments, in the times when I struggle with asking God, "God, are you there? Do you care?" I can go back to that. Among other things, God has been faithful in my life, but I can go back to some of those things that God has done to know that, oh yeah, God does care about me. That God does even like warp the natural in order to protect my life. And I think for me, when I think about miracles, when I talk about miracles, that's how I think about it, that it is something that God uses in our lives to show who he is. And it is something that is big enough that we would remember, because we're humans and we tend to forget things. But when we experience a miracle, that's when God reminds us, "Hey, I am here and I am faithful." But I think on the flip side, though, as one of the things that I want to talk about is sometimes we get so focused on the miracle and asking for the miracle that we lose focus on God, the giver of the miracle. And while miracles are good and miracles are from God, I feel like sometimes we grow more mature in our faith when we struggle with not getting a miracle or not getting a miracle yet, or the answers to our prayers don't seem visible as of this moment. And so I think when people ask us, that's this whole conversation or this whole thought process comes from a question actually that was asked: do you believe in miracles, and why are there miracles? Are there miracles today? Well, that's what got me thinking, and that's what I wanted to share about. I think waiting for answers and even struggling with times when we ask God and we believe for a miracle, but God doesn't work in the way that we expect him to, that is also useful to draw us closer to God. That is also useful to grow our faith. That is also useful to make us more mature and make us more like Christ. And I think the other thing, though, another question. This is from my conversation yesterday with one of my friends. She asked me, "So I'm in this position where I feel like I'm against the wall and I need a miracle. And is it okay if I ask God for one?" And the answer to that is yes. You can always ask God for anything. You can ask God for the littlest things. Like I ask God for parking spots. Like nobody's business. I would go, especially when I drive and I know that I'm going to a mall on a weekend. Like I talk to God and I talked to God in the car and I said, "God, like I know this is very trivial, but I'm asking for a parking spot." Or sometimes what we're asking for is huge and we think that it is so big that we're not ashamed. I think the Indonesian phrase is nggak enak with God for feeling bad for asking this of God. But the thing is, when we are his children and when we belong to him, we can ask anything. We can ask our Father for anything. I think that is one of the, and this is why if you've ever been in any IES service, we have a time when we pray for one another, and that is probably one of my favorite worship times, is that we have this opportunity to come to God. And that in Hebrews, the writer says that we can approach, because of Jesus, the high priest, we can approach the throne of God. Now I'm second guessing myself. Is it from Hebrews? I don't know. We can approach the throne of God and we can interact with him. We can ask him for things. We can ask him questions. And I think that is something that we need to do. And if you need a miracle in your life, if you are struggling and you need God to come in a huge way, ask him. He cares. Nothing is too small and nothing is too big for God. And at the end of the day, he cares for each and every one of us. And I think when talking about a miracle, though, and when we ask God for a miracle, sometimes, and we have to talk about this, sometimes the answer that God gives us isn't the answer that we want from God. And it gives us all sorts of feelings. And sometimes the miracle that we ask for, we don't get. I think I did this Bible study once. It's talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And there were options on what the Bible study person, teacher, that's the word, explain it this way, that there are options. God might deliver you from this big thing. God might deliver you through it, or like God might. I think, or we're just talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like you might not survive it. And either one though, God is faithful, and God cares, and God knows what's best. And I think that is something that is worth remembering, that we can ask God for anything. And we can also ask God, and he gives us the strength to go through it. And if that's the case, God is with you, and he says, and he promised from the beginning of the Bible all the way to the end that he will never leave you. And sometimes God doesn't take it away. And through the suffering or through the ordeal, we learn how to depend on God. So yeah, that's something that I wanted to share. I know I get a little bit reflective when I think about these things. But I also want to invite you to look back. I know I don't do this just on my birthday or when I think about, getting a year older, but think through your life. What are some of the big things and the little things, or the little things that you didn't know were big things that God did in your life that was good, or what changed you? What are some of the pivotal moments that, God answered prayers, or God opened up opportunities, or God put people in your life, specific people in your life that changed the course of your life, or become answers to prayers. Or if you have experienced miracles, what are some of those? I actually would love to hear some of those. So if you want to send it to me, or put it in the comments, or however you say, pigeon mail it to me, I would love to hear it, because I always love to see how God works in people's lives. Because I think for me, that's like the birth miracle is like the huge thing for me. But then there were things that I experienced as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, that showed me or reassured me that God is with me and that God loves me. And even though I fail him a lot, God cares. And so what are some of these things? If you have gone through miracles, what were they? Please tell us. We would love to hear about it. And also just take some time to be grateful. I am grateful for the things that God has given me. I am grateful for the people that I have around me. I am grateful for a great place that I can go to worship. I love our church family. I'm grateful for a lot of the different things that God has given to me. And so, what are the things that you are grateful for? Who are the people that you are grateful for? And so I want to invite you to think about that. But yes, I'm kind of on a reflective mode. And so this is me inviting all of you to be on a reflective mode. And also, actually, friends, if you have prayer requests. And if if you're in need of a miracle, ask the Lord. And if you want this very awesome church family to pray for you or pray with you, actually, you can just send it in. We have an email address. It's takeabeat@ies.online. And if you want to send that in, or you can just say, hey, I need a miracle. You don't have to give us details because you might not want to give us details. But we would love to pray with you. And we would love to walk with you as you ask the Lord for this miracle or ask the Lord for answers to your prayers. But friends, that's pretty much it from me. I haven't had enough coffee, so I feel like the fuel is running out. But anyways, we would love to get to hear from you. So if you have stories of your prayer requests, you have praise reports, you have ideas for other podcast episodes, I don't know. Please send it in. takeabeat@ies.online or DM us on Instagram, ies.online, or I don't know, what are all of our socials? Anyways, but yeah, or send a pigeon mail to IES. I don't know if we receive pigeon mail. Do we receive owls? Maybe we should talk about Harry Potter. Anyways, friends, thank you so much for being here and listening to my story, listening to my musings about life and faith and miracles. But we'll see you next week for another episode of Take a Beat. Don't miss a beat.